Kane Preston didn't expect his Tuesday to end with a woman screaming inside a broken elevator. He was just trying to get to the third floor of the rundown building where he cleaned offices at night. His 5-year-old daughter, Kira, was waiting back in the janitor's room with her coloring books and a sandwich he'd made from 2 slices of white bread and a single slice of turkey. He didn't like leaving her alone even for a minute, but it was either that or lose the job, and he needed every cent. The elevator doors were jammed halfway open. Inside, he saw a pair of black high heels, legs crossed at the ankle, and a very annoyed woman sitting on the floor with her arms folded. "Hey, you okay in there?" Kane asked, stepping closer. The woman's head shot up. Her dark hair was pulled into a sleek ponytail, and even in the fluorescent light, her makeup looked flawless. She didn't look like anyone who belonged in this building. "I've been stuck here for almost 30 minutes, she snapped, then immediately softened. "Sorry. This day's been a disaster." "Well, lucky for you, I'm the night janitor," Kane said, crouching to see her better. "And unofficially, the building's only handyman. You hurt?" "No, just my pride," he chuckled. "You sure you're in the right place?" "This building's barely standing," she hesitated. "I had a meeting. It didn't work out." He nodded like he understood, even though he didn't. She looked like she belonged in a penthouse, not this falling apart excuse for an office block. "I think I can pry it open enough to get you out." "Just hang tight." Using a crowbar from the supply closet, Kane wedged it into the door and pushed. It groaned, then slid open just enough for her to climb out. She hesitated, then took his hand. Her fingers were soft, but her grip was firm. She stepped out, heels clicking on the tile. "Thanks," she said, brushing off her pencil skirt. "You just saved my day." "No big deal." He glanced at the flickering light above them. "You want me to call someone? Maintenance won't be here till morning." "I'll figure it out," she said, but she didn't move. "I'm Mila Jennings." "Kane." "Kane Preston." They shook hands, her eyes lingering on his longer than he expected. Then she looked around. "Do you work here every night?" "Yeah, I clean on 3 floors and fix whatever breaks, which is, most things." She laughed, a real one this time. "I believe that." A beat of silence passed before Kane cleared his throat. "Well, I should get back to the 3rd floor. My daughter's waiting for me." Mila's face shifted. "You have a kid?" "Yeah, Kira, she's 5. I couldn't get a sitter tonight." Mila blinked. "You brought her here." "She's just in the janitor's room. Got her snacks and cartoons. Not ideal, but I don't exactly have options." Mila tilted her head. "Can I meet her?" He hesitated. Sure." They walked silently to the janitor's room. Kane opened the door and Kira looked up from her coloring book. "Daddy," she said, racing over. Her curly hair bounced as she wrapped her arms around his legs. "Hey, baby, say hi to Miss Mila." Mila crouched down. "Hi, Kira, I love your drawings." "Thanks." "Want to see my rainbow cat?" "I would love to." Mila sat on the floor beside her like it was the most normal thing in the world. Kane stood there, stunned. No woman ever stuck around long enough to meet Kira, let alone get on the floor with her. After 10 minutes, Mila stood up reluctantly. "I should go." Kane walked her to the lobby door. "Thanks again," she said, lingering by the exit. "For the rescue." "Anytime." He gave a small wave. "Good luck with whatever that meeting was." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Then she walked into the night. 2 days later, Kane was mopping the 3rd floor when he heard heels again. "Elevator still broken?" Mila asked, stepping around the corner. He stared. "You came back," had a follow-up meeting, "and I was hoping you'd be here." Kane blinked. "Why?" Mila shrugged. "Maybe I like rainbow cats." From that day on, she came by every few days, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with a new pack of crayons for Kira, sometimes just to sit and talk. It didn't make sense. Mila Jennings, with her designer coats and perfect nails, laughing at Kane's dumb jokes and letting Kira braid her hair. He didn't ask questions. He didn't want to jinx it. Then one night, sitting on the floor of the janitor's closet with Mila beside him and Kira asleep in the corner, he asked, "So what do you actually do?" Mila hesitated, then said, "I run a company." Kane raised an eyebrow. "Like a startup?" "More like a legacy. It's my family's." "But I took over 3 years ago." He nodded slowly. "So you're the boss?" She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Something like that." He didn't push. He was just the janitor, after all. But the next time she came, it was with 3 tickets to the zoo. I thought Kira might like to see some real rainbow animals, Mila said. They had the best day Kane could remember. Mila bought Kira cotton candy, a stuffed flamingo, and matching hats that said Zookeeper in training. When Kira passed out in the backseat of Mila's black SUV, Kane turned to her. You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to, she said simply. You both deserve more than this building and broken elevators. He looked at her, really looked at her. I don't get it. Why are you doing all this? Why us? Mila hesitated. Because I haven't felt this real in a long time. And when I'm with you too, I do. Kane's heart was pounding, but he didn't say anything because he was just a poor janitor, and she was something else entirely. He didn't know yet that she was a billionaire or that she was falling in love. Mila didn't tell anyone where she was going that evening. Her assistant had left a stack of documents to review, and her inbox had passed 2,000 unread messages again. But she couldn't stop thinking about Kane, about the way he never asked for anything, even when he had every reason to. About the quiet steadiness in his voice when he read to his daughter in that dim janitor's room. About the way the corners of his eyes crinkled when he was amused, even though his laugh always sounded like he hadn't used it in a long time. She parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, hoodie up, heels replaced with beat-up sneakers. No driver, no security detail, just her, and the kind of reckless impulse she used to be warned against. The building looked even worse at night. A flickering street lamp buzzed overhead as she pushed the side door open. On the 3rd floor, she found Kane kneeling next to a leaking pipe, a wrench in one hand and his shirt sleeves soaked. You're early, he said, not looking up. She crouched beside him. You look like you're losing a fight. This pipe's been patched more times than I can count. I think it's finally given up. Can I help? He glanced at her. You know anything about plumbing? Not a thing. He laughed, short and surprised. Then you can hand me that bucket. They worked in silence, her passing him things without being asked. When the leak stopped, at least temporarily, he sat back on his heels and looked at her, water dripping from his forearm. You didn't have to come here tonight. I know, she said. But I wanted to. His eyes lingered on her face a beat too long. Then he stood and offered her a hand. Come on, I've got something to show you. She followed him down the hallway and into a storage room she hadn't seen before. Inside, string lights were taped along the walls and an old radio played soft jazz from the corner. A plastic table was set against the wall, covered in a paper tablecloth and 2 mismatched chairs. Kira sat in one of them, coloring quietly. She looked up and beamed. Mila. Daddy made spaghetti. You did, Mila turned to Kane. I found a portable burner in the supply closet. Don't ask why it was there. Figured we could have a proper dinner for once. You made this for me, he shrugged. You've been feeding us. Thought it was time we returned the favor. They sat, the 3 of them, eating spaghetti on paper plates while the radio played on. Kira told Mila about a dream she had where she rode a dolphin to the moon. Mila listened like it was the most important story she'd ever heard. After Kira fell asleep in the corner with her head on a folded jacket, Kane cleared the plates. Mila helped dry them with a rag that might have once been a towel. I don't think anyone's ever made me dinner before, she said quietly. Come on. You're telling me no one's ever tried to impress you with food? They tried, she said. They just never cooked it themselves. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You don't talk about your world much. She looked at him. Because I like this one better. You don't mean that. I do, she said. In my world, everything is calculated, every word, every move. People don't talk to me, they talk to my last name. He didn't ask what that name was. He never did. That was part of why she kept coming back. She stepped closer. But you look at me like I'm not a headline, like I'm not carrying generations of expectations on my shoulders. That's because I don't know who you are, and you still treat me better than anyone who does. He held her gaze. You're welcome to leave all that behind when you're here, but you don't have to pretend with me. I'm not pretending, she said. For once, I'm being myself. She was close enough now that he could smell her perfume, something soft and floral that didn't match the hoodie. His breath caught, but he didn't move. Suddenly, Kira stirred in the corner. Mila stepped away. I should go, she said. He nodded, jaw tight. You'll be back tomorrow, she said. If you'll have me. He didn't answer, but when she turned around, he was still watching her like he wasn't sure if she was real. The next day was different. Mila didn't arrive at night. She showed up at noon, wearing sunglasses and carrying a brown paper bag. Kane was outside the building fixing a loose panel on the back fence when she walked up. "You're early," he said, surprised. "I thought you only existed after sunset." "I cleared my schedule." "You have a schedule to clear," she handed him the bag. "Lunch, I made it," he raised an eyebrow. "You cooked?" "No, but I selected it with great care from a deli where the owner thinks I'm a food blogger," he laughed. "That sounds more like you." They sat on the curb, eating sandwiches and watching pigeons stalk a stray French fry. "You ever think about doing something else?" she asked. "Like what?" "Something that's just yours, not cleaning up after other people," he considered. "I used to fix cars. Before Kira, I was decent at it." "So why'd you stop?" "Because being decent doesn't pay rent, and I couldn't afford to work my way up." She nodded slowly. "What if you could?" He looked at her cautious. "What do you mean?" "Hypothetically," she said, "if someone offered to help you get certified, open your own place. Would you take it?" He set down his sandwich. "I don't take handouts." "It wouldn't be a handout. It would be a partnership. You don't even know if I'm good. I know you're smart, I know you're resourceful, and I know you'd never take more than you need." He stared at her. "Why are you really here, Mila?" She didn't answer, not directly. Instead, she reached into her pocket and handed him a folded sheet of paper. He opened it. It was an invitation. Embossed, elegant, the kind of thing that belonged in a completely different universe. The Preston Foundation Charity Gala. Friday night. Formal attire required. He looked up. "What is this?" "Something I want you to see." "Why me?" "Because I trust you," she said. "And because I want you to know who I really am." She stood. "I'll send a car. If you don't want to come, you don't have to. But if you do, look for me." That night, Kane sat awake in the janitor's room, staring at the invitation like it might catch fire. He didn't own anything even remotely formal. He didn't move in those circles, but he couldn't stop thinking about the look in her eyes when she'd said she trusted him. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Not pitied, not overlooked. Seen. He folded the invitation carefully and tucked it into his coat pocket. Whatever happened next, he couldn't walk away from it now. Kane stood in front of the mirror in the thrift store's tiny dressing room, tugging at the lapels of the only suit jacket that fit his shoulders. It was one shade above charcoal, slightly too tight in the arms, but at least the cuffs weren't frayed. The pants were from a different rack entirely, but close enough in color. He'd borrowed $50 from a coworker, promising to pay him back before the weekend ended. Kira had helped him pick the tie, a deep navy blue one with tiny embroidered anchors. She'd said it made him look like he could steer a ship. He didn't feel like a captain. He barely felt like a passenger. The car Mila sent was parked outside the building at exactly 7. A sleek black vehicle with windows so dark he couldn't see the driver. He kissed Kira on the forehead, told her the neighbor across the hall would bring pizza, and made her promise not to draw on the walls again. As he slid into the back seat, he caught his reflection in the window. He looked like a man trying to pretend he belonged somewhere he didn't. The car pulled up to a historic hotel in the city center, one of those places with a name carved in stone above the entrance. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the double doors, and a string quartet played under a canopy of golden light. Kane stepped out slowly, heart pounding so loud he could barely hear the valet ask if he needed assistance. Inside, every surface gleamed. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. The guests moved like they were floating, each man in a tailored tuxedo, each woman in gowns that shimmered like molten metal. Kane stood just inside the doorway, trying not to sweat through his collar. Then he saw her. Mila stood at the top of the curved staircase, her hand resting lightly on the brass railing. She wore a floor-length dress the color of dusk, her hair swept up, diamonds glittering around her neck. But it wasn't the dress or the shine that caught him, it was the way her eyes found his instantly and didn't look away. She descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. Guests turned to look, some whispering, some adjusting their posture as she passed. Mila didn't flinch. She moved like she owned the air around her. When she reached him, she smiled gently. "Hi," she said. "This is your world?" Kane asked, his voice lower than usual. "It's a part of it," she said softly. "But only a part, and the rest, I've been figuring that out." "You've helped," he glanced around. "Everyone here knows you." They know my name, she said, but they don't know me, and I do. You're the only one who's ever looked at me without seeing a number. He didn't know how to reply to that. She held out her hand. Dance with me. He hesitated only a second before taking it. The ballroom floor was marble and the music slow. Kane had never been taught to dance, but he moved with her like he'd done it all his life. Her hand rested lightly on his shoulder, her other in his. She led without leading, letting him find his rhythm. He leaned in. People are staring. They always stare, she murmured. But tonight, they're wondering who you are. And what do you want them to think? That you're the man who walked into a room full of people who don't matter and made me forget all of them. They danced until the music slowed further and the lights dimmed for speeches. Mila guided him off the floor and into a quieter corridor. The walls were lined with framed black and white photos of past galas and people who had once mattered. She stopped beside a doorway and looked at him, more serious now. There's something I haven't told you, she said. He tensed. I figured. My name isn't just Mila Jennings, it's Mila Jennings Preston, he blinked. Preston, my grandfather started the foundation. My father built the real estate empire behind it, and I inherited it all. He stepped back, stunned. Your name's on the invitation. I didn't lie to you, I just didn't say everything. You're the reason this building exists, the one I clean every night. Yes, she said. And I've spent the last 2 years trying to fix everything that went wrong with it after my father passed. Kane stared at the floor. So what am I to you, Mila? A project, a reminder of how far your empire reaches. She stepped forward. You're the only thing in my life that doesn't feel like a transaction. He shook his head. You should have told me. I wanted to, but I didn't want to risk losing what we had. I didn't want you to look at me the way everyone else does. He turned away. Kane, she said, her voice cracking now, I didn't fall for you because of who you were. I fell in love with the way you look at your daughter, with the way you fix things that aren't yours to fix, with the way you make me feel like I don't have to prove anything. He didn't respond. I know you have every reason not to trust me, but I'd give all of this up if it meant I could keep you. He looked at her then, something flickering behind his eyes that hadn't been there before, not anger, not even confusion, just hurt. I need time, he said. She nodded, swallowing hard. Take all the time you need. He walked out through the lobby, past the valet, through a sea of people who didn't know his name. The car was still waiting, but he didn't get in. He walked, hands in his pockets, until the lights and music faded behind him. Back in his apartment, Kira was asleep with her arms around the stuffed flamingo Mila had given her. He sat on the edge of the couch, tie loosened, staring at nothing. He wanted to be furious. He wanted to feel betrayed. But all he could hear was her voice in that hallway, saying she'd give it all up for him. And the worst part was, he believed her. The next morning, he found the envelope under his door. It was unmarked. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a deed. The address was a run-down auto repair lot across town. One he'd walked past a dozen times, always imagining what it could be with a little paint and a lot of work. Attached was a note, written in careful handwriting. I believe in you, whether you ever forgive me or not. He sat there for a long time, staring at it. He could tear it up. He could ignore it. He could pretend it didn't mean anything, but it did, because she hadn't just said she loved him. She'd shown it. And now, he had to decide if love, real love, was worth walking back into a world he'd never belonged in. Or maybe, just maybe, it was time to build a new world entirely. One where neither of them had to pretend. The building looked different already. Kane hadn't touched it yet, but just holding the keys made it feel like it had already started to change. The auto shop was old red brick with soot-stained windows and a rusted garage sign that swung in the wind, but there was something about it that made his chest tighten with possibility. It wasn't the kind of place you stumbled into. It was the kind of place you built something in. He hadn't spoken to Mila in 5 days. Every morning, he'd walked past the deed, still lying on the counter where he left it. Every night, he'd stood outside the shop after putting Kira to bed, staring at the building like it might talk back. And now he stood inside, dust floating in the sunlight, the concrete floor cold under his boots. He ran a hand along one of the tool benches. The drawers opened with a groan, empty and waiting. The walls were bare, except for a faded poster of a race car that had long since lost its color. He could see it, though. The lift working again. The windows clean, shelves lined with tools. Kira sitting in the corner with a book, her feet swinging while he worked. But all of that, the vision, the future, it sat on the edge of something he hadn't decided yet. Mila. He hadn't taken the car she'd sent after the gala. He hadn't responded to the note, and she hadn't come after him. Not once. It wasn't out of pride, he knew that. She wasn't the kind of woman who chased. She was the kind of woman who believed that trust had to be earned, not demanded, and he'd walked away from her when she'd laid it all bare. He couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. That he made her feel real. That she'd give it all up. That she had fallen for him not because of what he lacked, but because of who he was when no one was looking. And yet, how did he fit into a life like hers? How did he show up in her world without feeling like he was playing dress-up? Kane locked the garage and walked back to the apartment with his hands in his pockets. The air was cooler now, fall creeping in. When he opened the door, Kira looked up from the floor where she was building a tower out of cereal boxes. "You were gone long," she said. "Had to check on something." She tilted her head. "Was it the garage?" He blinked. "How'd you? I heard you on the phone with Mr. Darnell. You asked him about permits." Kane crouched beside her. "You've been spying on me." "I was bored," she said, then leaned closer. "Do we get to live there?" "Maybe, one day, but it'll take a lot of work." "I can help. I'm really good at organizing things." He smiled. "You are." She looked at him seriously. "Are you going to see Mila again?" He hesitated. "I don't know." "Why?" "I think she misses you." "She hasn't said anything." Kira shrugged. "Maybe she's scared." Kane sat back on his heels. "Why would she be scared?" "Because you loved her and then you left." He looked at his daughter, stunned silent by the clarity only a child could have. Later that night, after Kira had fallen asleep with her arms wrapped around her pillow, Kane stood by the window and dialed the one number he hadn't saved in his phone but had memorized anyway. It rang once, then twice, then hello. Her voice was soft, guarded. "It's me," he said. Silence stretched between them. "I got your note," he added. "I wasn't sure you would. I went to the garage today." Another pause. "I still don't know what to say to you," he admitted. "You don't have to say anything," Mila said. "Just tell me if you're okay." "I'm not," he said. "I miss you." For the first time, she didn't speak. "I've been thinking about everything you said, and everything I didn't say. I didn't walk away because I didn't care. I walked away because I didn't know if I could ever belong in your world." "You don't have to," she whispered. "I never wanted you to. I want to do this right," he said. "I want to build something of my own, not with your money, with my hands, but I also don't want to do it without you." "I never asked you to," she said, and he could hear the emotion catching in her voice. "I'm not good at this." "I know," she said gently. "But I didn't fall in love with you because you were polished. I fell in love with you because you're real." Kane exhaled slowly. "Then meet me tomorrow." "Where?" "At the garage. There's something I want to show you." The next morning, he scrubbed the floor until his shoulders ached. He borrowed a ladder and replaced the broken overhead light. He taped a sign to the front window, handwritten, uneven but clear. Preston and daughter auto repair coming soon. When Mila arrived, she was dressed nothing like before. Jeans, boots, and a gray sweater that looked far more her than any designer gown ever had. Her hair was pulled back loose, and she was holding a paper bag. "It's not from a fancy deli," she said, handing it to him. "Just 2 egg sandwiches and some coffee." He took it. "Sounds perfect." They sat on the steps outside the garage, side by side, watching the street slowly come to life. "I'm going to make this place work," Kane said. "It's going to take time. I'll probably mess up, but I'm going to do it my way." "I don't want your perfection," she said. "I just want you." He looked at her. "Why me, Mila? Of all the people in your world, because you never wanted anything from me," she said. "Not a cent, not a favor. You just wanted to know who I was, and you gave me space to be that." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. She looked at it, startled. "I don't have a ring," he said quickly. "Not yet, but I have this." Inside the box was a single brass key. "To the garage?" she asked. "To everything," he said. "To this place. To me, to Kira. I'm not asking you to move in or sign anything. I'm asking you to stay." She looked at the key for a long moment, then closed the box and slipped it into her pocket. "I'll stay," she said. "But only if we make a deal." "What kind of deal?" You let Kira design the waiting room, he laughed. You're going to regret that. No, she said, leaning her head against his shoulder. I won't. Weeks passed. The garage started to bloom. Kira painted a mural on the far wall, a giant rainbow engine with stars for pistons and a cat riding a motorcycle. Customers trickled in slowly, then steadily. Word of mouth spread faster than any ad ever could. Mila came by most afternoons, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with blueprints for expansion. But mostly just to sit with Kane while he worked, her hand slipping into his during quiet moments. They never made announcements. They didn't have to, the town knew. The customers knew. The world outside their garage faded until it was just the three of them, building something no money or legacy could ever buy. And one morning, as the sun rose through the shop windows, Kane knelt beside Mila in the back office, holding a velvet box with a ring he'd saved for in secret. Mila Jennings Preston, he said, I still can't believe you came out of a broken elevator, but if I get to spend the rest of my life fixing things with you, I'll never take that for granted. She didn't cry, she just nodded, eyes shining. Yes, she said. Always yes. And this time when they kissed, there was no world they didn't belong in, because they had built their own. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for Preston and Daughter Auto Repair drew a crowd bigger than Kane expected. A line of neighbors, old coworkers, and curious passers-by stretched along the sidewalk. Kane stood in front of the shop, wearing the only button-down shirt he owned that still had all its buttons, while Kira clutched a pair of oversized gold scissors like they were legendary. Mila stood beside them, her hand resting lightly on Kane's back, not for the cameras, not for appearances, but because that's where it belonged. She wore a soft green dress and flats, her hair loose around her shoulders. Her makeup was minimal, but her eyes were alive in a way that they never had been at those galas or board meetings. Kira raised the scissors and cut through the red ribbon with a dramatic flourish. Cheers erupted. Kane scooped her into his arms and kissed her cheek, while the local news anchor asked a few questions, jotting notes without interrupting the moment. Later, when the crowd thinned and the camera crews packed up, Kane leaned against the garage door and watched Mila help Kira rearrange a basket of mini tool-shaped cookies. Neither of them noticed him staring, which made the moment somehow better. It wasn't for show. It was theirs. Still want to run? Mila asked, joining him a few minutes later. Not anymore, he said, but I'm still terrified. You should be, that's how you know it matters. Are you scared? Every day, she said, but I've stopped pretending I'm not. Kane turned to her. What do you think your family would say if they saw you now? She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. My mother would say I've lost my mind. My grandfather would ask what the return on investment is. And my father. He'd probably smile and say, it's about time you stopped playing pretend. Would he have liked me? He would have liked how you love her, she said, nodding toward Kira. That would have been enough. Kira ran over then, holding a cookie in each hand. Daddy, Miss Carla says you fixed her car last week and now it runs better than new. She gave me $5 and said it was a tip for the manager. Mila laughed. You're the manager now. I've always been the manager, Kira said, as if it were obvious. Kane lifted her into his arms. Well then, manager, I think it's time we closed up shop for the day. No way, she said. Mila promised we'd go get ice cream and I'm holding her to it. Mila raised a brow. I did promise. Then I guess I'm outvoted, Kane said, grabbing the keys. They locked up the shop together and walked 3 blocks to the corner ice cream parlor. Kira chose bubblegum, Mila picked pistachio, and Kane ordered strawberry even though he hated it just to see Mila steal a bite and wrinkle her nose. It made him laugh every time. That night, back at the apartment, Kane tucked Kira into bed while Mila cleaned up the kitchen. The space felt smaller than ever now, and he could see how the edges of her world didn't quite fit in it. But she never complained. She never asked for more. When he stepped into the living room, she was standing at the window, looking out at the lights lining the street. Without turning, she said, I've been thinking about something. Should I be nervous? I want to sell the penthouse. He blinked. Wait, what? I've barely been there in weeks. It doesn't feel like home anymore. It's just a place with high ceilings and cold furniture. I want something that feels like us. He stepped closer. You'd give all that up. I'm not giving anything up, she said. I'm trading it in for dinners at the garage, for walks to the ice cream shop. For Kira's bedtime stories, for you, he wrapped his arms around her from behind. Where would we go? I saw a little house a few blocks from the shop. 2 bedrooms, a backyard big enough for a garden. Kira could have her own room. And I could finally learn how to burn pancakes in a place that's actually mine. He kissed her shoulder. You're serious, completely. Then let's do it. They moved in 3 weeks later. The house needed work, nothing structural, just years of neglect, but Kane didn't mind. He fixed the leaky faucet, while Mila repainted the kitchen cabinets. Kira picked out wallpaper with tiny stars for her new room and insisted on a glow in the dark ceiling. They settled into a rhythm that felt like it had always been there, like the pieces of their lives had been waiting to click into place. Mila started hosting free car care workshops for women on Saturdays. Kane hired 2 mechanics from the neighborhood, both single parents like him, and paid them fairly. One afternoon, he came home to find Mila in the backyard, barefoot and elbow deep in soil. She looked up with dirt on her cheek and a grin on her face. I thought you hated gardening, he said. I do, she said, but Kira wants sunflowers. He walked over and crouched beside her. You'd do anything for her. I'd do anything for both of you. He kissed her then, slow and deep, surrounded by half-planted flowers and the sound of Kira singing to herself through the open window. Months passed. The garage became a neighborhood staple. People stopped calling Kane that guy who used to clean the building and started calling him the guy who can fix anything. Mila's old business partners tried to lure her back into boardrooms, but she declined every offer. She wasn't interested in running empires anymore. She was too busy building a home. One crisp autumn evening, as they sat on the porch drinking tea, Kane reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Mila opened it carefully, her eyes narrowing as she read. What is this? It's a reservation, he said. For next week, Rivera Park, sunset. I figured it's only fair that the woman who walked out of an elevator and into my life gets the wedding she deserves. Her hand trembled slightly as she looked up at him. You're serious. I've never been more serious about anything. She nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. He took her hand and kissed it. The ceremony was small. Just them, Kira, a few close friends, and the mechanics from the garage who insisted on wearing matching blue coveralls instead of suits. Mila wore a simple dress with lace sleeves, and Kane wore the same suit he'd worn to the gala, tailored now, thanks to a gift from one of their clients. Kira walked Mila down the aisle holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Mila's vows were clear and steady. I used to think love had to be complicated, that it came with contracts and conditions. But you taught me that love is a home. It's the sound of laughter in the back of a garage. It's the smell of burnt toast. It's your hand in mine and your daughter calling me family. Kane's voice cracked as he said his. I never thought someone like you would see me, but you did. And not once have you ever made me feel like I had to become someone else to deserve you. You've given me everything without ever asking for more. I don't know how I got this lucky, but I promise I won't waste a minute of it. They kissed to applause and laughter, and the hum of old love songs played through a borrowed speaker. Later that night, as they lay in their new bed in their new home, Mila rested her head on his chest and whispered, Are you happy? He ran his fingers through her hair. More than I ever thought I could be. She looked up at him. So what now? We live, he said. We love, we raise Kira. And maybe we plant those sunflowers. Mila smiled and kissed him once more, soft and sure. Outside, the wind rustled the leaves. Inside, warmth bloomed, and for the first time in either of their lives, nothing was broken. Everything was exactly as it should be.